Are we training people to use AI tools? Or are we training them to think better with AI these days?
The Sasberry AI Podcast. People are building AI wrong, and here's why. With special guest Bill
I'm
Schmarzo.
Chris Cade, and I'm with Sasbury, and we're having a Friday podcast today. And today, I'm joined by Bill Schmarzo, someone I describe as a rare hybrid of a strategist, builder, and teacher. Bill has spent decades working at the intersection of data, analytics, and AI, helping organizations move from theory to real value. He's known for cutting through hype and reframing AI as a force that amplifies human domain expertise and not replaces it. If you followed his writings or work on autonomous agents, you know he's deeply focused on how AI unlocks human ingenuity and creativity and the best decision making. I'm excited to dig into how that thinking applies as AI becomes more autonomous and more embedded in how we work. Bill, thank you for joining us today. How's everything down? Whereabouts are you?
So I'm in Des Moines, Iowa, and we're
Okay.
actually having a lovely day here today. We've had a lot of rain and some pretty cold weather, so gonna ready to hopefully enjoy a nice weekend and go out for a nice bike ride.
Nice. Nice. Well, you're known as the Dean of Big Data, and you're a keynote speaker, and you're a professor, and you're teaching. Talk to me. Since the last time we chatted, what have you seen the whole evolution? What are you seeing down in the US of adoption and new technologies from your students, from your corporate clients? Why don't you bring me up to speed on what's been going on over the last 6 months?
Sure, Chris, this is good. I love this topic. So the the thing I've been spending the most time on ever since releasing my latest book, The AI Human Edge, is really helping both organizations and individuals understand how AI is a force to help amplify their domain expertise, not automate them out of jobs. Um, and the challenge from an individual perspective is there's so much hype out there being spewed about, AI. I think this CEO of AI at Microsoft said in 18 months, all white collar jobs are going to be done by AI. Yeah, right. Right. But he gets paid to say that. So,
Yeah.
but it's how, if your passion is nursing, if your passion is teaching, if your passion is an architect or whatever profession you have a passion for, AI can help you amplify that. AI can help you guide you through I call the three phases of professional development. There's the sort of the rookie phase, the competence phase, right? You're just trying to learn the ropes. This is very apropos for my students who you spend, 3, 4, 5 years just learning the business. Well, AI can help accelerate that, can help broaden that, right? There's ways that AI can do. Then there's a second phase, which is really the mastery, which where we spend most of our life. We're trying to become very proficient at our skill set, trying to become the best, whatever, civil servant, detective, engineer, mechanic, whatever it is you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
That mastery and AI can help in all kinds of ways to help you become the best you can become, to learn from the best in your domain and elevate you above that. And the third phase, which I don't think many people get to, maybe people don't really care about it, but I call it the elevation phase, which is what you're doing elevates everybody around you. You make your team better. It's like a good professional athlete, right? The good professional athlete on a basketball court makes everybody on the court better. And and not only do they make everybody else better, but those people also have the chance to elevate their profession, to uncover new techniques and procedures and learnings and share that to raise whole the whole tide for the entire profession. So to me, that's where I'm spending my time with my students is saying, don't be afraid of this. This is a
Right.
tool to help you. And the people who are trying to scare you, let them spend their time scaring themselves. You use
Right.
this to become the best, whatever you want to become.
Well, that's an amazing segue. I saw Yahoo Finance yesterday had an article saying Gen Z workers are so fearful AI will take their job, they're intentionally sabotaging their company's AI rollouts. And that's pretty scary. We do not preach anything to our customers about taking jobs away. We used to call it human in the loop. Now we call it human in charge. And the more creative employees they have, the more powerful they're coming. So when you hear Gen Z, I mean, you're teaching younger audiences. Are you hearing that same thing? I mean, you just said you're teaching them not to be scared of this, to embrace this. But are you seeing a lot of people fear this and want to sabotage it?
Yeah, not with my students. Not with my students. and everybody I talk to across, Iowa State, Iowa State has, I think, 5,600 students in the business school. It's a pretty good sized business school. And I don't talk to all of them, but I do. I spend a lot of time. Not only do I have my own class, but I typically come in and guest lecture across many of the classes. And I think there is initially a fear of what they don't know. But as soon as you lay out a plan, a development plan, it shows you how this AI can help you become the best you want to become. And I walk them through a series of exercises where they go through and they're doing they're training their, I call it Yoda, your own digital assistant, right? And how do you turn this into a digital assistant so it helps you become better? They take to it really quickly and they start pushing the edges really quickly. Can I ask it this question? Wow, can I have it do this? Can I have it assemble, a pretend you're a panel of the world's best salespeople, right? And help me understand what are the 3 skills I need to master over the next 6 months as a beginner, right? And a tool can help them do that. So what I see is the minute you make them aware of the reality and the opportunity, they climb on and they go like bats out of hell. Right? That's what I see.
So I,
But until then, they're scared. They're like, whoa, right? What do I do?
so you're enforcing the message that AI as a force multiplier and not a replacement, right?
Good
So
term.
again,
Force multiplier.
yeah, it was actually a guest of ours a couple weeks ago that said, "Stop calling it human in the loop and call it human in the charge." So I'm disciplining myself to continuously say that. Now,
Well,
human
let's pause there. Let's pause there a second, Chris, because I have a little bit different take on that. It's not just human in charge. I call it AI in the middle. And so I'm working with an organization, for example, who's trying to re-engineer the sales force. And the traditional way to set up a sales force is you assign people to territories, right?
yes,
And you look at people's basic average performance and you line it up. I said, what if you could build a very detailed causal model on each of your salespeople to know what they're best at doing, right? Build propensity scores, right? So I know they're good at this, they're good at that, they're not so good at this, they're weak at this. And then I also had propensity scores, models, like we call entity propensity models. We built these back in the old Yahoo days on each and every one of my customers, where they are from a growth perspective, a financial perspective, a technology, a risk perspective, an organizational adoption perspective. And if you have those very detailed profiles on your salespeople and your customers, AI could act as a matchmaker saying, this is the right salesperson for this account. And so instead of just arbitrarily assigning, AI can be this mix master. And then once that's been made, leveraging, entity language models, especially domain specific language models, as you're having a conversation relationship with that customer, the language model can find relevant content that's important for enhancing that relationship. So I said, it's AI in the middle being your Sherpa, being your Yoda, your own digital assistant who's trying to make certain that the conversation is successful for both the sales rep and their company and the customer and their goals.
that's very interesting because and I've been in sales. That's how Bill and I actually met. I believe you were the CTO of Data at Dell at one point, and going way back. But we work with Adrian Scott, one of our board members here, and he was the original investor in Napster, and he put us all through personality tests to see what our strengths and our weaknesses were,
Yeah.
and he's aligning our vision and plans around that as well. So it's interesting to hear that from a sales perspective, and I think that would make a way bigger impact to an organization, aligning the right seller to the right organization rather than verticals or geographical maps and so on. So that's
Yeah.
interesting.
And if you have that map and you're mapping them and make sure they're lined up, the AI in the middle can also identify areas where the salesperson is deficient, skill set wise, and make training recommendations, make education recommendations, make development recommendations based in the context of the relationship. So instead of salespeople going to, 2 weeks of mandatory training on a bunch of bullshit that doesn't really apply to them, they get very focused recommendations, say, hey, this is a skill set you lack in. You should spend time taking this class from Coursera or doing this or reading this book it can give very specifics. And when you make recommendations at a very emotional level, they tend to stick. It's like, oh, wow,
Right,
that could help me become a better salesperson because I'm not doing well in this particular skill set. And that's what the customer really needs to be successful. I can develop that skill set.
right. Yeah, I love it. I've been reading a book by Warren Claffs recently on the pitch. And the guy's an amazing, he uses psychology around everything. So, I mean, for our listeners out there, totally recommend that book. But going back to the subject, human judgment as the scarce asset, where AI still depends on humans to work well. And I think that's what you're saying. Align the right human with the right opportunity and then align that AI tool into that person's personality or behavior patterns, right? So, how
It's
does
the
human,
guy. It's
yeah,
their Yoda that sits on their shoulder, trying to help
yeah,
them become
yeah,
the
yeah,
best salesperson and delivering the best customer experience and the best customer outcomes possible. It AI is really great at managing those trade-offs that have to go on between what's beneficial for the company, my sales team, and what's beneficial for the customer. It isn't one or the other. It's an end situation, right? And how do I balance that so I get the best experience? How do I synergize across it to get the best experience? I don't want the least worst option. I want the
right.
best option.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, what decisions still fundamentally require human judgment then that you've seen, even in these highly automated systems? Where are you seeing the decisions really come key from human in charge perspective?
So the one thing I find really interesting is humans have a natural intuition. They can sense things. They can understand when they're talking to a customer when things aren't quite right, right? Now, the AI with them can help them to sort of decompose that a bit. In fact, what the AI can do is what the human can sense, the AI can quantify and put a score around. So if I can sense that something's not right, there's a distance that I've got, I'm in a customer meeting and my two sponsors are not, they're at loggerheads. I can just sense there's not something wrong there. I can sense that and have the AI help me figure out how do I bridge that gap? How do I help those two, get on the same page? How do I define their common success criteria around which I can help them build a relationship? Because a lot of what we do in sales isn't just between us and the customers, it's helping the customer themselves line up properly so that when we come forward with a solution, they're ready to act on it.
Yeah, that's crazy because our evolution in our own company, we're pushing everyone to go off of instincts. We've been calling it instincts, right? Like, what is your instincts telling you? And then leverage the tool behind everything. And I think even going back 15, 20 years ago, maybe we were taught to put those instincts down a little bit. And now we're like, bring them out. If you got a gut feeling, I want to hear about it. So
Exactly.
creative. So this creativity in the age of AI and how AI unlocks ingenuity instead of constraining it. How does AI change the creative process when experts use it correctly?
So I think it helps you. It not only allows you to accelerate your mastery because you're being exposed to the best in the practice, right? You can level them. You can turn your Yoda into a role model who is the best engineer. That my son's a detective, for example, and he can become that Yoda can become and tap into the best detectives. But what I also find is interesting about what Yoda can do. I always talk about Yoda, right? Your digital assistant, right? Is that it can look across domains. You can say, people, this space here is not exactly. So you're a detective, but people over in healthcare do this when they do diagnosis, right? And here's a guy who's doing physical athletics training for physical athletes, and they do different diagnosis. So, what are skills that I can pull from other domains to blend into my domain? So again, AI has its ability to look across crevices and find things that might be of interest. That's the key point. Me, I'm still the one saying, I don't think that makes sense, right? But if you don't have enough mind moments, you never have any breakthrough moments. And so this idea that it can bring other observations to me and I can say, that is a great idea. How do I actually do that?
That's you're definitely resonating because we've got a number of tools we're building for customers, and one of them's a private equity firm. We're building a really advanced reporting tool, and they can ask for those other opinions from other people within the organization, get that type of advice that they may not think of in their specific domain. So you're nailing it exactly what we're doing with customers out there as well. So are we training people to use AI tools? Or are we training them to think better with AI these days?
Ooh, two really hard questions.
Yeah,
Um, we are not doing a very good job of training. I think some of the best companies I've run into um, train on the fundamentals of how to set up a prompt. Um, but they don't teach people how to train their models. Now, I'm not saying the
right.
traditional large language model kind of training, but how do I take an AI, an AI tool like ChatGPT, for example. And how do I? Here's a problem I'm trying to go after. So how do I train that tool to do it? Because I like to say, I tell my students, there's three realities of what AI will do. Number one, AI will only do what you train it to do. If you don't train it to do something, it ain't going to do it. Number two, it will relentlessly optimize whatever variables and metrics you give it. So be careful because what you give it becomes law to it, right?
Yeah.
And number three, it amplifies existing biases, prejudices, and misalignment. So you
Yeah.
better address those issues before you start bringing AI because it'll auger those things and cause. So if we understand that AI will only do what we train it to do. So my class, which by the way, I think I was the first class at Iowa State to mandate the use of a Gen AI tool. So we have classes still who don't allow it. But I mandate it. And so we do the first day of our class is every student builds their own digital assistant. Because
Okay.
what they do at classes, we put them in groups of two, they pick a problem, a company, a problem to go after, and they immediately start training on that problem. So here's the company I'm going after. It's a hospital. Nursing retention is a big problem. How do I train Yoda? So the first thing they do, they go out and do a bunch of research. Find peer-reviewed, credible research, right? You can specify that. And by the way, Google search is still the best for doing that, right? And you find these peer-reviewed university, consortium, and you start load it into your Yoda. Because what you're doing is you're automatically telling Yoda, instead of trying to average all the 440 million books in my large language model, these are the 5, 6, or 7 books that are most important. So start finding me books like these. And then we train it on that. We go through we train it to think like Socrates. So we upload a Socratic method and we tell it to don't answer me with answers, answer me with questions. We upload the New Testaments, Matthew and Luke, for example, the books. So the book has and I want answers that are responsible, ethical. We upload it on the 19 human decision-making biases and traps and tell it to make certain we don't fall into confirmation bias or recency bias. So we do all this training of Yoda to make sure it knows how to think holistically like a professional, to not be swayed by opinion coming from different sources. And so that's a lot of work.
That's interesting. Your student's first assignment is to build an agent assistant. So right before you can get into the coursework, that's the first
Exactly.
time I've heard that. That is
Yeah.
that is
And
awesome.
then throughout the actual out the class, we're using my thinking like a data scientist methodology, the 8-step process, and they're going through that 8-step process with their Yoda. So every step, they're teaching Yoda more about this step. Yoda's teaching them more. They're filling out the templates, the design concepts themselves first, and then they're asking Yoda to review, to validate. Can you find me other examples? Can you find me sources of other companies that have done this? Can you right? So they're teaching to really take this Yoda and to expand it more and more. And by the way, at the end of this Yoda, you've now got this thing very well trained, not only on the problem you're going after, but also how you think. It's responding like Socrates. It's responding like Jesus. It's responding like an economist, right? But but anyway,
That's
that's what we do.
really so that could even show that. I mean, to go back to what you said earlier before I get into the next question, if you've got a bad manager in your organization and you give it AI, you're going to make that bad management style get better and better at being a bad manager, right? So I think
Exactly.
that's
Exactly.
like the big thing, right? But I think it also goes in that organizations make mistakes when pairing AI with junior versus senior expertise. Everybody's different too. So I think what you're saying too is if you're not really careful and you just throw AI at a junior person and or a senior, it might fail on either side.
Yes. Yeah. So the ideal team, and I had a friend that did this a long time ago at a company when he was doing an internet startup, is he would try to always marry an experienced person with the junior people. The senior people acted like mentors helping, right? But they also brought a really rich set of domain expertise. They were in a particular, they were marketing, they were engineering, whatever they were, but they knew that space and they could bring that domain expertise, which the AI or the Yoda in this example can build on that, can help that. And the junior person is learning from the mentor and the AI tool has now been, the AI tool has been mentored by the expert as well.
Well, let's switch a little bit into some of the recent blogs you've been posting, and then let's let all the listeners know where they can go to read some of your material. But autonomous agents and boundary settings, autonomy with purpose and control. In your autonomous agent series, you emphasize constraints. Why are these boundaries essential for creativity and trust, Bill?
So not only constraints, but the absolute need to build causality into your agent's decision-making process. That in order for an agent to serve me well, it can't know what I like to do on average or what people like me on average like to do. It needs to know what my propensities are. So the series talks about how you build these propensity models. The example I have is a family going on vacation, and you build a propensity model on each of the 5 members of the family so that you know the causal factor. So it has to if it has to make the decision about how to construct the right kind of vacation, it's looking across the 5 family members, understands the causal factors, and is trying to find that right blend that
Right.
satisfy them as a group versus each individually. And so to me, the cau the challenge with a lot of these Gen AI tools is it's an averaging tool, right? It's a probabilistic averaging tool using machine learning techniques that gives you averages, right? And nobody I talk to, especially my students, want to be average. And so the idea is, how do I make certain that I can build causality? So when an agent makes a decision, it can explain to me why it made that decision, quantify the why, and if it makes a decision that I don't like afterwards, I can do an introspective to figure out, okay, this is why this wasn't work. You thought I preferred this at a higher level than this, and that's not exactly the truth. This was more important to me, and we didn't catch that in the model. So having those quantifiable variables and the associated weights associated with them becomes critical to make sure these AI agents are doing exactly what it is that I need them to do.
So where does autonomy empower humans versus undermine them? Like, where does that come into play?
Well, you mentioned guardrails, right? So
Yeah.
knowing knowing with high degree of confidence what it is I want to do, and if it doesn't have a high degree of confidence, then asking me for a prompt, right? I got to make a trade off here. Which one's more important? That's how it learns, right? It's now going to, it has these 2 factors. I just told it that safety is more important than excitement. That affordability is more important than experience, and it's learning these, and basically these causal models operate through a neural network that's basically constantly changing these weights based on what's important to me as an individual. Your variables might be different, right? Mine might be safety here and experience here. You might be more like this, or someone who's younger might be more like this. Right? It doesn't each person is an individual, and you have to build those very detailed propensity models on each individual so the AI model can make those important trade-off decisions.
Do your courses have the word or the letters AI in them? Like when students are signing up, does it have AI written in the subjects?
So the name of the course is AI-driven innovation. So it's
Okay.
it's pretty clear,
There you
and
go.
we
Yeah.
highlight that the class is actually not for technicians because we spend more time in the
Right.
class talking about design thinking and
Right.
how to identify people's
Okay.
needs, your and such. We talk a lot about economics because economics is the study of how do you create value, and value is not about financial value. Think about broad value definition from a customer, an employee, a partner, an ecosystem, a community, a society, a workforce, environmental, ethical. All those variables need to be taken into consideration because our AI model needs to be able to consider all of those things as it's making those important trade-off decisions to give me a unique experience versus your unique experience.
So human plus AI team model. And you mentioned before high perform. Everyone wants to do like everyone wants to be better. So what does
Yes.
a high performing human plus AI team actually look like in practice? Like how would that look?
Good question. I'm not sure. Be honest, Chris, I don't think I know at this point in time.
We
I
don't
don't
know
I
yet, right? We
we
don't
don't know
know.
yet. My
Yeah.
expectation is we'll see people, become the best at what their profession is, that second phase of mastery, but my hope is that there are people that cross over into that elevate phase. People who look at their abilities and say, "You know what? It isn't just about me. It's about my team, my coworkers, my community, my profession." And to me, what AI I think will happen is, yeah, it'll make us the best we can become. It'll make us, we can master our skill set, but can AI also give us, it's a human motivation to do that, but can it lower the barriers for us to help others as well. How do we become super mentors, and elevate others, elevate the team, elevate the profession? So to me, that's the mark of when AI is really hitting in all cylinders, when it's allowing people to do that more easily.
Yeah, last year, so I want at the end of this talk about what you're seeing from adoption, but last year we thought organizations would be lining up to invest in AI a lot more than they were. And now we're seeing conversations, more conversations coming. And now we don't talk about, I guess we talk outcome based. So AI pushing organizations. Are you seeing AI pushing organizations to get clearer about outcomes and accountability of their employees versus kind of like, hey, this is a really cool thing we can do? Are you seeing that now?
Yeah, I am, but there's one interesting thing about that, because outcomes is the right way to look at it, right? What are our outcomes? And by the way, if you're not looking at the outcomes from the broad range of your
Right,
ecosystem, right?
right.
The desired outcomes of your employees, your desired outcomes of your community, your desired outcomes of your think about all the so we certainly want to think broadly about outcomes. The challenge for most organizations is how do you define value? Right? How does your organization define value? And organizations get very, blinded into, well, it's ROI, it's net present value, it's IRR. And let's be honest, those are lagging indicators. And AI does a shitty job of optimizing lagging indicators. Right.
Yeah.
So how do you think more broadly? And we have a chart we go through in the class many times throughout the semester that looks at value from the perspective of customers, employee, community, all talked about, right? And that's what happens is these AI models, you go from having a small number of variables to having hundreds, if not thousands, right? We go through an exercise to identify the variables that you might want to, the factors you might want to consider when you decide to go out to eat. It's a little exercise that we do at a high school here in Des Moines. Take the students through it. I get 100 or so students, and we're brainstorming about what are the factors you might want to consider when you decide to go out to eat. And they brainstorm as groups, and a lot of energy. It's fun, and they come up, and we write them all down on the board, and they'll have between 100 and 120 factors and variables. I said, think about your mind, when you're trying to decide where to go eat, is trying to weigh across that. How does it make the decision? Well, what's your intent and what are your desired outcomes? And based on those two factors, the AI model will say, oh, for example, if I'm going out for lunch, it's almost lunchtime here. I want something that's quick and adequate and affordable and all the things that relate to that, right? Distance, coupons, promotions, price, all those factors, their weights increase, right? I'm going to Chipotle, right? But it's Friday night as well, and my wife wants to go out Friday night, date night, right? She don't want Chipotle. So she wants something that's, her intent. She wants something where she can dress nicely, can be steamed, wants a fancier restaurant. So affordability drops in value, but now what increases is, visibility, quality of the experience, being seen, et cetera. And the models in our head automatically make those weight changes based on our intention and our desired outcomes. We talked about outcomes, right? Desired outcomes are important. So by knowing those outcomes helps my AI model to adjust and make the right kinds of guidance, the right kind of recommendations at that point in time, given the context of what I'm trying to do. So outcomes are critical, but it has to be tied back to a broad range of how do we define value.
Yeah. Because we rate, so what we do is typically my CTO will interview the customer and really talk about the business workflow process, what the outcome's going to look, what align the technologies. I then go in and then I interview the customer on, building the business case, right? We need some measurable, but I can't measure the value that you're talking about. There's so many unknowns that are outside of a typical business case. It's basically saying, hey, this will still pay for itself within 6 months. But the real upside is all these other value things that we can't really measure. And if you ever figure out how to build an agent to measure that for me, sign me up. I'll take that right away because I'll put that right into my business case.
Well, let me share with you a design thinking process we use in our engagements. Right.
Okay.
So we pick a problem we're going to go after. I mentioned nursing retention. Right. So we're going to say what's nursing retention. So we'll have a workshop and we'll bring all the different stakeholders, 30, 40 people into a room, nurses, doctors, administration, customers, healthcare insurance companies. We bring all the different people who are involved. A lot of these people don't maybe even like each other, right? And you bring them
Yeah.
into a room, we go through a process. Okay, here's our objective. We're trying to improve nursing satisfaction and nursing retention and et cetera, right? So we lay out the challenge in the front. And the first thing we do is we say, okay, we break them into groups, small groups of 4 or 5 people, mixed, right? Again, we like to find people who don't agree and put them on the same team.
Okay. Yeah.
And the first step is, okay, if this is our objective, what are our desired outcomes? That is, what does good look like? And just start writing them down on Post-it notes, right? Everybody's don't have people debate it. Just start writing them all down. And so you'll get out of a group of 40 people, you'll get 80, 100 different desired outcomes. And then we say, okay, now for each of the desired outcomes, what are the KPIs and metrics around which you're going to measure those? And by the way, we want 2 or 3 for each of those outcomes. And
Okay.
also the metrics start to explode based on their perspectives. As a community member, I measure nursing effectiveness by, longevity and work opportunities for local employees, right? So there's different, and so you start carving out all these KPIs, metrics start coming out, and we then look at it from, what are the benefits, KPIs and metrics? What are the impediments, KPIs and metrics? What are the ramifications of failure? If we fail at this, what are the KPIs, metrics, and what are the potential unintended consequences? And so the room, all of a sudden, it's a pretty large room, is covered with Post-it notes around desired outcomes and around KPIs. We have literally, as a couple of the clients have told me at this point, and they elbow me in the ribs and say, "You've turned everybody into an AI engineer." I said, "Exactly right. We've now
Wow.
defined the AI utility function." So, so now and then we go. So it's a whole design thinking project. I talk about it in my book, The Art of Thinking Like a Data Scientist. Here, a
Yeah.
little blurb
Yeah.
about, but about
Yeah. Bring that book up. Let's see what that is. I want to hear more about that. But how do we measure it financially? Some of those outcomes. So that's what like a CFO only cares about money, right?
But that's the thing. A lot of these are leading indicators. If I can improve nursing retention,
Hmm.
at all kind, right? It has ramifications on patient satisfaction, less lawsuits, more referrals. If I can retain nurses, it means I'm not having to go out and hire new nurses. I'm not having to train new nurses. The finances just flow out of it. Remember, this is a lagging indicator. If we understand the lead indicators, the financial aspects will all spill out, and they're very robust, right? And thinking about the community perspective and how if I'm retaining nurses, and from a community perspective, I got more people maybe who are dining at the local community areas, who are helping the economic growth of that community right around the hospital. All those have financial measures, maybe not just for the hospital, but for all the different stakeholders are all trying to find a way to get some sense of value from this exercise.
You're nailing. This is how executives need to learn AI. CFO, you don't need to code and develop. CFO needs to understand what you just said so that they can start measuring more than just a financial number and know that it's going to have an impact on that. And if they don't, those CFOs are going to be useless with that enterprise. Every single project I'm working on now, every single one, as a CEO or CFO executive sponsor, if they don't, I'm not seeing progress go. I'm not seeing outcome talk going. And I've been struggling with the value base, but you've definitely given me a few ideas how we can maybe measure that more of a financial.
So you got a homework assignment. Get my book. That's the textbook I use in my class, by the way. So
Yeah. Okay.
I've been using it for over 20 years. I just released a second edition. It's been really modified for a lot of the AI stuff. But
Yeah.
we use that in my class so that the students know how to have a conversation around. You said outcomes. Outcomes is important.
Okay.
How am I going to measure the outcome success? How am I
Yes.
going to measure value
Are we?
creation? Because that all impacts eventually the AI utility function, the models around which I'm going to actually build my AI agents, other things. If I know how I define value, if I know my outcomes, I know my
Yes.
intention, now the AI model can start making the right decisions for that community.
Yeah. Before I let you go, I want you to tell me where we can get that. But before we do, looking ahead, what is the biggest misunderstanding leaders have about AI that you're seeing right now and creativity today?
So I think the biggest challenge right now is we have a lot of organizations who are looking at AI as a productivity tool.
Yes.
Right. And productivity is not a sustainable differentiation because it's like the spreadsheet, right? The first people use a spreadsheet, great, but soon everybody's using a spreadsheet. There's no advantage, right? And so as a productivity, the value on productivity actually does this, it flattens out. There's no additional value. The second area though is really around um, how do I drive effectiveness, right? I don't want to do things just faster. I want to do things better, right? So instead of cranking out 10 marketing campaigns faster, what are the 3 that are most effective? And how do I and that's all related to economics, the economic value curve, and dimensional the dimensioning level law of diminishing return, right? There's an economic reason why efficiency is so much powerful than productivity. So if productivity does this and flattens out, effectiveness does this, kind of increases. But the third phase is how do I do things differently? How do I re-engineer? And this is where creativity and innovation and ingenuity comes in, where people are saying, well, we're trying to accomplish this, and yeah, we're doing it better. First, we did it faster. Now we're doing it better, but now we're doing it different. We've eliminated some of the steps. We've eliminated this. We've done this differently. And I think that's where you start seeing the compounding value occur. You start thinking about that third phase of how I do things differently, right? Stop
Yeah.
paving the cow path,
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah. Even my content director said to me recently, maybe we don't do so many, we just do more quality and get a better response. Right. And so that's what I think you just said there. Let's focus on, let's just say a content director has to do 10 postings a week in social. Well, what if they did 3 that got way more audience engagement than 10 that didn't get any, right? So Bill, this has been an absolute pleasure for the audience out there. You're available to do keynote speaking,
Yes.
to do corporate training
Yes.
and knowledge sharing. So share a little bit about where, and we'll post the links below in
Yeah.
the comments.
So
But
you can buy this book, The Art of Thinking Like a Data Scientist, and all my books, including this latest one, The AI Human Edge, which by the way is a monster, right? It's 500 pages. But this is the book that I use in my class.
okay,
This is a book I use for people who really think and understand that their most important asset are their people, right?
okay,
Truly believe that, right? So if you think you can get the most, by the way, who drove the creation of this were professional sports teams and some major college football programs who knew that their most important assets were their employees, were their players, their athletes, right? That's
yeah,
right. Well, the techniques we develop for the baseball players and the football players and the basketball players, they all work for creating the best nurses, to create the best architects, creating the best technicians, creating the best electrical engineers. They all work the same way. So
but we need to talk about that because off record, I'm working with a couple of major baseball leagues out there right now, and I'm interested in hearing more about that. So, do you have a website that their listeners can go to?
basically the best thing to do is follow me on LinkedIn. I am on
LinkedIn.
Substack.
Okay.
And I publish a blog probably a couple times a week. I'm looking to make that try that in the link. Um, best
Okay.
place to find me is on LinkedIn. And the reason why I like LinkedIn is because you can have conversations there. So I post stuff and I don't want to just post one way. I want to post something and I want people to respond. And I've learned a lot from people who've read my post and said, I like that. What about if you did this? What about
Okay.
if we added this? Right. And
Gotcha.
that's where I learn stuff.
Well, are your books also in Audible, or can they download and listen to them?
Yeah.
Awesome.
And by the way, the
Awesome.
good news is it's not me reading them. It's somebody professional.
Well, the trouble is with just paperback, I just don't have time to sit down, it seems like. But when I'm in my car or at the gym, I'm always listening. So I'm going to download your book after this. Bill Schmarzo, the Dean of Big Data. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. And thank you for taking the time on this Friday morning to attend with us today. I look forward to talking to you offline about how maybe we can do some more amazing things together and see where the future is going to lead us. So again, thanks a lot, Bill, for doing this, and appreciate you, and nice to see you again.
Thanks very much, Chris. Thanks for reaching out. I've had a blast.